Hi, this is Jay Billis of ESPN, and you're listening to the ML Sports Platter.
Back with you. The podcast is all over Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts. Make sure you do leave a 5-star review and some feedback along with that download and subscription. We are on YouTube and Tumblr now, as well as the Podbean app. Unbelievable to have you aboard. Appreciate the support. And, of course, you can get me on Twitter at Mike L. Sports and Mike L. Sports 1979 on Instagram. We are supported by Lakeshore Yacht and Country Club. Make sure you get out to Lakeshore this year. If you're in and around Central New York, pick up your membership. You get the pool combo with the golf. Stay for lunch after your round. You can eat dinner there. The restaurant always open during the season and in the off season. We're back in season now, finally. It's nice to have, at least a little bit warmer weather. And you can bring the kiddos and the family out to the pool. Well, dad plays golf, whatever the case may be. And hey, don't forget about private parties and events and weddings, you name it. Lakeshore Yacht and Country Club is the official entertainment center of the ML Sports Platter. We are also supported by the Wolfenden Law Firm, Rosie's Corner, and James Fiorentino Artwork. He's the official artist and painter of the ML Sports Platter. Log on to jamesfiorentino.com. Check out all of his work. Again, that's jamesfiorentino.com. James, Fiorentino. jamesfiorentino.com. So, what's really, really remarkable, I mean flat out remarkable, is the top dogs in the Stanley Cup playoffs. As we record this, we're gearing up for 3 Game 7s between the Sharks in Vegas, Capitals and Canes, and of course, the Bruins and the Maple Leafs. But because all of these big dog teams have lost, the Stanley Cup is wide open. And I don't know if I can remember a time when it was this wide open because of the top seeds going down, in awful fashion, by the way. I mean, just getting absolutely shit pumped, as the Spittin' Chicklets guys would say. But, in succession, it's like, one fall, bang, bang. This is the first time in league history, by the way, that the top seeds in both conferences, lost in the first round. And boy, did both of them look horrible in how they lost. Tampa Bay was horrendous. There is just no nice way to say it. They were brutal. Brutal. I mean, they lost, they were up 3-0 in that first game, and that was the key point. They let them back in, them being the Columbus Blue Jackets, and that was it. They could not control. After that, it was just a constant avalanche of mistakes, a constant avalanche of failure, a constant just disaster of errors and inability to score. And you're talking about a team that had 3 40-goal scorers, arguably the best defenseman in Hedman, arguably the best goaltender in Vasilevsky, and had the best player in the league in Nikita Kucherov, and they just totally shit the bed in the first round. It was the most embarrassing and worst loss in the history of the Stanley Cup playoffs, in my opinion. And then you go to the West, right, and you go to Calgary, a team that all year was really great. I love their young core there. I think they're going to be really good for a long time. That was an 107-point team this year, folks. I mean, after Tampa Bay, it was Calgary and Boston with the most points. I mean, in Calgary, you kind of looked at them and said, boy, I'm not really sure. I need the playoffs to see. I need the postseason to kind of get a little bit of a gauge to see how real they are. Because this isn't a team like Pittsburgh, who's been here a lot, and they're a 1 seed. They've done it before and all the rest. This is a team that had a new crop of youngsters. This is a team that had awful goaltending in stretches this year, and you wondered how that would look in the playoffs. Well, now we have the answer. This team, I think, needs to go out and make a splash. I don't know what their cap situation is. I have no idea, what that looks like. But this team needs some major help with the goaltending. I don't think there's any question about it. They need a boost. Can they go get a Bobrovsky again? I'm not really sure what that looks like, but the Flames were horrendous in this playoff, and it's just the goalies just didn't get it done. In the playoffs. Mike Smith is old at 37. John Gillies and Dave Rittich, no offense, but you need something more there if you're the Flames. I love the young core, don't get me wrong. I do. I love the young guys. I think Rasmus Andersson is going to be a great defenseman in this league. They've got Matthew Tkachuk, who's going to be terrific. His brother Brady plays for Ottawa. Their dad, Keith, one of the all-timers. Johnny Gaudreau is, for the crop of 25 and under, just a wonderful player. And then you've got a bunch of guys around that 24, 25, 26, age, a little younger even than that. You've got the Sam Bennetts and the Dylan Dubes and the Dubés and the Jankowskis and all the rest. But this team bowed out early, and we learned all about them. They need some seasoning. They need some playoff experience. They need some more goaltending, and they need a little bit more, work in terms of working together. And that Flame team was a joke. By the way, in that series against the Colorado Avalanche, I would tell you that, if there's one major takeaway from that series, and I'm not surprised. I picked Calgary, but I'm not surprised that Colorado won. That was actually the hardest series for me to pick because I knew how good Colorado really was. And I think the number one takeaway should be Nathan MacKinnon. What a star this guy is for the Colorado Avalanche. A team that won, had 90 points this year, is a developing guy. You hear about Austin Matthews, you hear about Pasternak, you hear about McDavid, you hear about Laine, and once in a blue, sort of Nathan MacKinnon kind of falls behind. And, that should not be the case. This guy is as good as any young player in the league right now. You also got to see Cale Makar perform. He's going to be an elite defenseman in this league for a long time. I was lucky enough to see him play in the Frozen Four in Buffalo. He's just played on a Saturday night and then just bang, whammo, day after was with the Avs and actually had a very nice couple of games in that series. He, scored a goal and really found his way through the middle of the ice, and I thought he was great, and the Avs deserved to move on. And then you had another situation happen with, the Nashville Predators, in a 100-win team. Three 100-point teams, went down in the first round. Nashville, Calgary, and Tampa. And Nashville, they started to really look shaky, in my opinion. And late in the year, there were some holes there defensively. There were certainly, in my opinion, Pekka Rinne did not look like the same goalie. Down the stretch, I worried about some of their frontline scoring. I just didn't know if it was going to be enough. Philippe Forsberg and these guys, they made the deadline acquisition of Wayne Simmons. Was it going to be enough? Were they tough enough? This Predator team it felt like, from the second to fourth lines, just weren't good enough, weren't, providing enough for this team. They weren't as good as, past Predator years. And, that's crazy to think of as an 100-point team. But again, It's like the 100-win baseball team in terms of, there being plenty of flaws, but you can get through, maybe a regular season. And I just didn't. I was unsure. I still picked them. I still picked them over Dallas. But the two, dark horse teams in the West for me were Colorado and Dallas. Those two series were super hard to pick. I almost went with both of them. I didn't. But, this Nashville team, again, 100-win team, unbelievable play the last few years, but this year it just didn't work out, and you looked at the depth at the center position and Brian Boyle and, and picking up Simmons and, Granlund. They picked up Mikael Granlund as well, and so they had it, but, that depth didn't really kind of showcase, in a way. I mean, Granlund, he gave you 2 points. He gave you a goal and an assist all series. Forsberg 1-1. There were a lot of guys who had a rough series. Nick Bonino had a rough series. 2 assists, -3. They just, Wayne Simmons provided some kind of a little bit of a spark. But again, they just were not A to Z as deep and as scary as Nashville teams are and have been in recent years, and that's what it comes down to. Nobody wants to play the Nashville Predators, Nobody wants to play them. They're one of the teams in the NHL that nobody really wants to play, especially at Nashville. Well, what happened in the first 2 games? They lost game 1. They didn't even set a tone. They win game 2, win game 3, and you're like, okay, here we go. But then they lost 3 in a row. Because they froze in terms of scoring in game 4. They froze again scoring in game 6. And Dallas really neutralized them. The big explosion game was 5-3 loss to Dallas at home. But, Nashville is one of those rare places in the NHL where the arena is indeed a little bit different. You can distinguish yourself, and they did not take care of home ice. I mean, that's, they weren't deep enough. They weren't committed enough. And I think, not winning on home ice, it hurt them. I mean, there's no doubt about it. You thought, well, geez, if you can, at 2-2, they had an opportunity to, again, take the series and the stranglehold back. Then you had to go at Dallas, and you're like, okay, well, just win 1 because then game 7, anything can happen, and we're home. Well, they lost. They lost 3 in a row. They couldn't find the back of the net. And, they lose game 1 at home. They lose game 5 at home. And, between that and them not being as scary and dominating, and the goaltender being shaky down the stretch and kind of going in with, with a little less in terms of the mojo, and this team on paper looking, of course, okay, looking deep, that depth really didn't come to fruition in terms of production. So Nashville out, Calgary out, Tampa out, and this Stanley Cup playoff is wide open for the taking. You could tell me any of the teams left could win the Stanley Cup, and I would probably believe you. That's just how it looks. It's how deep it is. It's really, really amazing stuff here. And by the way, there is no playoff or postseason better than the Stanley Cup playoffs. I'm Mike Lindsley. Thanks for listening to the ML Sports Platter all over Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts. You can download, subscribe, leave feedback, and a 5-star review to the ML Sports Platter. And of course, hit me on Twitter at Mike L Sports, Mike L Sports 1979 on Snapchat and Instagram. We are presented by Bryant and Stratton College, Timberbanks Golf Club, the Manor Bakehouse Cafe, and our friends at Main Street Host. Make sure you head to mainstreethost.com today for a free website analysis on how you can grow your business socially and digitally. mainstreethost.com. As I always tell you, enjoy the games.